That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Stunning comeback win. Here's Ovechkin shoots. He scores! He scores! Number 895.
For North America, for that matter, that would love to have his team on that cup.
All right, everyone, welcome to Bayonets and Brews History Talk, and thank you guys for stepping in on this on a Monday night. It is 7 p.m. Central, where James, our guest for tonight, who is the backbone of the channel, the creator of the channel, Project Past, our special guest for tonight, very good friend of mine, and probably one of the best YouTube channels out there, if you're a history guy. And I've got to say oh, come on.
Line's bad.
But one of the best, seriously, one of the best history channels out there that you can watch. What's up, man? How's it going in South Florida or West Florida or no, East Florida? You're St. Augustine.
You're getting closer. Northeast. Yeah, things are good. Thanks for having me on. You got Nickelback rolling. I mean, I got football on tonight. It's the Packers are 2-0. Things are going good. I'm going to Gettysburg this weekend, so great start to the week.
Dude, it's going to be a busy week.
Yeah, but what else is new?
So, for you guys who don't know who James is, he's with the YouTube channel again, which is called Project Past. You can check him out on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, wherever you watch your stuff at for social media. It's all over the place. And he's been doing some cool stuff. We've been friends for quite a long time. I've seen this guy grow. He's kind of a mentor to me in a way, because some of the things he's doing is absolutely cool, including a virtual battlefield walk, which is something you just put up the first video of you doing one of these on the channel. What's the deal with it?
Yeah, so it's kind of one of those, I had the idea kicking it around forever, and just one of those, sometimes content can get stale. So you want to, add new things for your viewers and things like that. And I was like, I have a handful of pictures. Our first battle walk was with the 27th Connecticut in the wheat field at Gettysburg. So I just happened to have pictures of all their monuments through the wheat field. And I was like, you know what, like if I put a presentation together, kind of like what we're doing here, and throw maps on the screen, and we'll stop at each monument and talk about what happened there, it'll be kind of like you're walking the field on a battlefield tour, but virtually. So, it has some podcasting elements, but kind of more of like a webinar, I guess you can say. And, we're just essentially going through the battlefield together, stopping at the monuments, talking about what happened. And, I get that not everyone can go out to a battlefield whenever they can, whether it's health reasons, financial reasons, or life is just getting chaotic. So, my goal for these battle walks and my channel is to bring the battlefield to your living room, or the palm of your hand if you're watching it on your phone. So, when we're doing these walks together virtually, or, you're watching my videos, I want you to feel like that you're there with me. So that's like the main goal of these battle walks and my channel as a whole.
That's really cool, man. That's something I haven't really seen a whole lot of people do. And I know I watched the first episode and I absolutely loved it. I mean, but
it was a long one, but it was kind of the introduction to it. I'm teaming up with my good buddy Andrew Boer, who's a phenomenal asset. He's actually been following the channel for since I really started, and he kind of reached out to me, and he's the reason why I'm kind of getting in the podcast now. Doing our own podcast together, and he's just a brilliant mind. He's got such a passion for Civil War history, and I asked him to help me out with this, and it was fantastic. We worked really well together, and he's going to be essentially my co-host for these battle walks, and I'm going to try to do one a month. I did realize that after the first episode, I was like, I don't have I have pictures of the battlefield, but I don't have like a flow. I'm not following a specific unit or brigade. So when I go back to Gettysburg this weekend, I'm going to take a handful of pictures for future battle walks. I'm going to try to sneak over to Antietam to grab a few pictures to follow some units there. So I wanted to evolve, like I said, just do one a month, and maybe if they're popular and people seem to enjoy them. I got good feedback on the first one. So maybe they'll evolve to, maybe every other week or something like that. But yeah, so me and Andrew are going to try to crank these out for you guys.
It looks like a lot of work, man. A lot of editing work, a lot of time and sweat put into them.
Yeah, I would say making the maps is the most time consuming thing. Making maps is something that I started doing, I guess maybe 2 years ago now. And of course, that has evolved into, I'm getting better and better at making my own maps. I was using the Battlefield Trust maps, and Hal Jesperson has fantastic maps available on his website and Wikipedia that are free to use in videos and things like that. But, a lot of them offer just overviews, just say the wheat field at Gettysburg. It's super chaotic. You got maps, you got units going everywhere on a map, and sometimes it's hard to follow. So what I started doing is, if I'm talking about a specific brigade or specific unit or a specific part of a battlefield, I just make my own maps, and I just put what we're talking about on those maps and where I am in relation to the video. So, I'm running a Shiloh series right now. So I think, Shiloh is one of those battles that's very chaotic and confusing. And just when you think you're pushing back a unit, a new brigade appears on your flank, and now you're outflanked and pulling back, and then another unit's rushed up. It's just a lot of moving parts, very chaotic. You don't have clear fields of fire. So, I found that making maps really helps me understand it. So hopefully that's another piece of the puzzle for you guys that are consuming the videos. So yeah, that's the most time consuming part.
Speaking of you guys can send us your questions. If you have a question you want to ask Project Past, or if you want to ask something in general to me or both of us or whatever, you got comments, leave them in the comment section. It's there for you to do that. We can see those live here as the show goes along, so make sure you're doing that. But James, I've always been interested in it because I know a little, just from you being friends outside of YouTube, I know a little bit about you, a pretty good bit, I guess, but how did you get started in this? What made you decide to one day just pick up a camera and start filming YouTube videos?
Well, I think my wife wanted me out of the house, so she encouraged me to do it. No, but so I've always loved history ever since I was a kid. I was like many people watching, I'm sure, and many people interested in the Civil War. My parents popped in Gettysburg when I was super young. I must have been, I don't know, 6 or 7 maybe. Popped in Gettysburg, and I was hooked ever since. And then, I grew up during the late 90s where, a lot of war movies are being cranked out. So I was consumed by it, and it stuck with me. I'm all through high school, and then, graduated high school, and, I still had this love for history, ended up doing my career. But I always, every time a documentary was on or something like that, I was always like making time for it and consuming history content, getting magazines. There was, tons of Civil War magazines. I feel like 15, 20 years ago, you can go to the store and there was 5 or 6 Civil War magazines that you can, pick up and read. Now there's none, unless you go to like Barnes and Noble or something. But I just didn't know, like I had this love and passion for it. I just didn't know what to do with it. And then during COVID, you couldn't do anything. So, I was, my wife and I were talking, we're like, what, when this is over, let's do like a East Coast road trip. So, and she's a history teacher. So obviously there's a connection there, but, we both really wanted to do DC. So I started just YouTubing DC videos, came across JD History Underground. And then, I was like, oh, cool. He has Band of Brothers stuff. Oh, cool. He has this. And before I knew it, I was just consuming dozens and dozens of his videos. And that grew into, the Battlefield Trust and Vlogging Through History, all these other channels. And, my wife was like, you love history. You like videoing. You like taking pictures. I visited battlefields and stuff like that before this. She's like, why don't you, she's like, you're passionate about it. Why don't you try it? So then one day I literally created Project Past, and then I went to a site and just started filming and rambling, and here we are. I didn't really have a direction or goal for the channel. I was just like, I'm just, recording and having fun. And, I think it was in 21 when I started Project Past. So here we are 4 years later, and yeah, it's evolved into what it is now. So that's essentially how it started.
Dude, I remember, like, you mentioned the movies, Saving Private Ryan, Gettysburg,
Yeah.
Gods and Generals. What I'm just curious, what were some of your favorites? Let's see if we got the top tier kind of the same here.
So of course Gettysburg. I love Glory, Platoon. It was before my time, but it was just one of those. It's just such a good movie, and of course, when I'm younger, you don't really understand all the dynamics in a movie like that. Of course, now, it's just a fantastic movie. Really just shows how awful war is and what it does to people. Platoon is one of my favorites. Of course, The Longest Day, like those classics. Saving Private Ryan, Black Hawk Down, We Were Soldiers. Like those were all coming out, as I was going through middle school and then into high school and things like that. And even movies like Cold Mountain, I didn't care about the story, but I know in the beginning was the Battle of Petersburg. So yeah, I mean, there's so many of those movies that I feel like aren't really coming out now. I mean, we had, 1917 came out rather recently, and then you had All Quiet on the Western Front, which I thought was fantastic. A few other ones, but you don't really have like those blockbusters coming out anymore. So I watch Gettysburg at least 2 or 3 times a year, trying to watch Glory at least once a year. So yeah, like those movies are just staples. A TV show, not a movie, but it was, in my mind, the best TV show ever made, called Civil War Combat. It was on the History Channel. You used to have to look at the TV guide in the newspaper, and they would give you one for the week. So I used to look at it and look at every single day on the History Channel. And if they were running a marathon of Civil War Combat, I would be sick that day. So I can stay home from school and watch Civil War Combat all day. I can say that because I know my parents aren't watching. But yeah, and that show was just fantastic. I believe Gary Edelman's in it back in the early 2000s. Fresh looking Gary Edelman. Just fantastic historians. And what it is, it's just like, they take a battle and there's reenactment footage overlaid with a narration. There's firsthand accounts, and then they throw in historians over it. And it's an hour long, and it was just fantasc. Dustin mentioned The Patriot. That was a staple. I probably saw The Patriot 20 or 30 times. Me and my friends were in the woods pretending that we were the Swamp Fox, and the Redcoats were, marching down the road. Just staples like that, where you watch a movie and then you go outside and reenact it. But yeah, so this just Civil War Combat. I gotta throw up a shout out to that one. That one's not on anymore, but you can YouTube it, and I think the History Channel has the episodes on their channel. So if you don't know, if you've never seen it, do yourself a favor and consume some of those. They're fantastic.
Dude, I used to love watching Civil War Combat. Actually, I forgot all about the show until you actually brought it up, and I was just sitting here. I'm like, dude, I remember that show. Like, I used to get in trouble for how long I was sitting and watch TV, because that would be like a marathon of these episodes. And Readout Production says Cold Mountain, phenomenal opening. Couldn't tell you anything about what happens after. Dude, I was the same way.
I just remember the crater and just, the visuals from that. Like, that's something that we haven't had in a Civil War movie. So you're seeing that, and then seeing the Union troops, instead of going around the crater, they go into the crater, and, just the brutality of that part of the battle. They do a really good job of showing that. But yeah, I couldn't tell you what was next after, the first 20 minutes. And also Free State of Jones, I guess, was a Civil War movie. So yeah, they all have their flaws, but the important thing is, maybe they spur other people's interests, like kind of like us for Gettysburg, or maybe someone sees Cold Mountain and goes, "Oh my God, like what battle was that?" And then they, Google it and be like, "Oh wow, trench warfare in the Civil War, interesting." Just all you need is that spark.
Lionheart Filmworks, big shout out to those guys, by the way, for sponsoring the channel here and let me use some of their footage inlaid throughout videos on the channel. You may notice them. But talking about Lionheart Filmworks, I wanted to do that because I want to bring something up. They just released the Red Badge of Courage, and I think you could
like
go
the full movie?
yeah, like you could
Really?
go and watch it. And dude, it's pretty good. Like it's pretty good.
Really?
But Will over at I'll tell you who's been feeding me a lot of my freaking history fits, and that's literally the name of the thing. Is Will over at History Fits.
Yeah.
I mean, if you guys haven't bought the app, and I'm not trying to get you to buy an app just because they have a good relationship here on the channel, kind of as a sponsor, and James does a lot on History Fits as well. You can see James on a lot of History Fits. But if you guys have not got the History Fits app, you got to go do it. Like, I got to tell you what, I don't even watch TV. I watch YouTube. And here lately, it's all been History Fits. Like, there's so much great content on that thing now. There's a lot of little mini movies. Will actually, he's a cinematographer and director. And he actually works on the show Chicago Fire. Well, one of my favorite shows. James is a firefighter, for those of you who don't know, and wonder what Project Past does off the camera. He is a firefighter. So, but no, I'm not bringing up Chicago Fire because of that. But the guy that plays Mouch in Chicago Fire.
He's in some movies.
There's one film on there. I think it's Hold My Horse or something like that.
Yeah.
Dude, that was hilarious. It's like a little, 15-minute mini movie, kind of Civil War comedy, and it is, dude, that's got to be the funniest thing I've ever seen, as far as someone making some kind of mini Civil War content. But there's a lot of things on History Fits you can go check out, and there's a lot of great movies on there. Wicked Spring is on there, and a few other films. But it's. I don't know. You've got a lot of stuff on History Fits too.
I got a handful of stuff. It kind of started I have a video from Devil's Den, and a lot of people, every now and then I get a message, like an email, saying like, "Hey, you have a lot of Gettysburg stuff, but you don't have Devil's Den." I was like, I do, but it got age restricted because of some of the images that appear in that episode. The famous sharpshooter image. The same images that are on the signs in the park, and the same images that are in high school and college textbooks throughout our country. But it got age restricted because it wasn't appropriate. So it essentially got buried in the algorithm. So Will reached out to me and said, "Hey, I don't hate the fact that is buried in the algorithm. It's not getting anywhere." He goes, "Give it to me. We'll throw it up on History Fix." And that's how it started. And I threw him a few other things. And then now, I'm working on an exclusive series for him that you can't see anywhere else. It's called Battlefield Chronicles. I do have a trailer on my channel, but essentially I'm kind of trying to model it off of Civil War combat. Not exactly the same, but, we're narrating a battle, talking about a certain story, throwing in some context from a couple of historians, Evan Portman being one of them. And then, throwing in some reenactment footage to provide additional visuals. I'm way behind on it. I'm supposed to have one on a Lusty done. It's just, I'm not done yet. Will's been waiting for it forever. Sorry, Will. But the first one I did is kind of like the pilot. It's about finding Captain Henry Fuller's monument in Gettysburg and Rose's Woods. One of my favorite experiences doing this, walking through the center, we tried to follow his path of the 64th New York through the wheat field, over the stone wall into Rose's Woods, and then they'd be pushed back by the Confederates. And at that point, he was mortally wounded. Middle of the Rose Woods, I believe his name was Private Whipple, tried to carry him, couldn't get very far. Fuller got struck again, and then Whipple himself would be captured. So they have a monument to the approximate location where he fell. And so, we kind of went through the Rose Woods and found that monument. And I made a Battlefield Chronicles episode about that. That's on there now. So I'm hoping to get him more exclusive stuff here that you can't see anywhere else. Because, people can consume all my stuff on YouTube. So why would they go to History Fix? So I want to offer him things that, people can't see anywhere else, and kind of, get more of a documentary feel instead of like the vlog feel on my channel. I want it more, like the Civil War combat or Civil War journal type structure,
One of the things I have noticed, man, about YouTube is like, okay, when I started YouTube, I've always been a history buff since I was a kid like you. But, when I started YouTube, I was watching all of these people, along with the history content, I was watching a lot of people do military ration reviews. So, like, I got kind of interested in it. I was like, this is a kind of cool aspect of history. So I started doing ration reviews. God help me, don't go watch those videos. They're still on the channel, but guys, don't go back and see them. Trust me, it's pretty bad. And eventually I said, I'm going to evolve to doing what I want to do, on the channel, which is what I've wanted to do from day one. But, it's kind of cool to go back and look, and even, I've seen some of your I've seen your first video, all the way up to now, man. And, it's cool to see how you evolved and get better and better and better. And now I call you for advice, because I'm like, dude, this is throwing me for a loop. What's the best way to do that? It's neat to have friends to be able to help out. And
I've learned that I make a ton of mistakes. Sometimes those mistakes I can cover with B-roll. Sometimes I can edit out something stupid that I said or a mispronunciation. Sometimes I can't. And, sometimes I miss it. So once it's on YouTube, man, sometimes I get eviscerated. But so I've learned a lot. And, I know that, B-roll is very important. B-roll is your best friend. You can overlay a lot of things, and it also helps tell the story. When you're overlaying additional visuals, and it just keeps people engaged. It's definitely a learning process. There's still things that, I may learn tomorrow that I'll start doing and then stop doing what I'm doing today. But yeah, it's, you learn. Like I said, when I started, I had no direction. I would, research a few paragraphs, and I would go to a site and talk about it. And then I would read some signs and stuff like that. So, in my mind, as I kept doing this, I was like, you know what, like I want to bring the battlefield to your home. I want to bring the battlefield to the palm of your hand. I want you to feel like you're walking through it with me. So I kind of started gravitating toward like the more personal stories and following a specific brigade, or, just focusing on one section of the battlefield. So that's kind of how it's evolved.
One of the things I like about YouTube, I like about your channel, and, the American Battlefield Trust and the History Underground, is like, I'll go to a lot of these battlefields I've never been to. Never been there, don't know how to navigate it when I go. But if I watch one of your videos, or I watch the History Underground, or I watch the American Battlefield Trust, I could kind of know what I'm going to be looking at before I get there. And therefore it helps you navigate the battlefield. So for a lot of people out there that watch this content, I believe that's one thing that could, having this in their living rooms and being able to go there kind of virtually gets them prepared for a visit there, and they have a better idea of what they're looking at. Then there's people with disabilities who may never get to go there, or, lack of funding, and they can't afford to go to these places. So, doing what you do is kind of neat, because people can kind of go visit these places and learn about them without being able to actually have to go there.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, that's the main goal. If you feel like you're following it or walking through the battlefield with me like that, that's my main goal. And of course, if you learn a thing or two, that's fantastic too. Because once you learn a story, maybe that person tells 3 or 4 other people, hey, I learned about, so-and-so at this battlefield. Because again, like I'll say this because we're in football season. I like the Jimmies and the Joes, not the X's and the O's. So like think about all the books on Grant, Lee, Jackson, Longstreet, all these prominent figures that are extremely important to history. But think about the men underneath them, the ones doing the fighting, the ones charging up to the Mule Shoe, the ones going up Little Round Top or assaulting Culp's Hill or making Pickett's Charge. Those are the men that those are the stories that I want to share. And those are the footsteps that I want to walk in when I go to these battlefields, because they were just ordinary men living in a very difficult time in our country.
Right.
A lot of them dropped what they were doing to fight in this war. A lot of them were drafted, had no choice to fight in this war. And, they did it to the best of their abilities. And, when you learn about the tenacity of Civil War combat and how awful it was, you're always left wondering, like, how in the world did anyone even survive? Think about a color bearer goes down. There's 10 guys waiting to pick up that flag without hesitation. It's like, what? Yeah. I don't understand, like, the level of bravery that these men displayed. That's one of the things that I want people to take home when they watch my videos is, these were ordinary men doing extraordinary things that, you and I would think twice, and I'm not afraid to say that.
And now we could kick back on something like this with a brew and talk about it, so many years later, which is pretty good. What do you drink about it? We got to see what the brew choice is for tonight.
Despite the shirt, it's not Guinness. I don't even like Guinness. I just like the shirt. I'm more of a Jack and Coke guy or a margarita guy, but all I got is a High Noon, 100 calories, gluten-free. So it's doing the trick. So I'm more of like a margarita, Jack and Coke guy, but the pantry is running a little bare, so had to make do.
And you're drinking healthy tonight.
Yeah, it's gluten-free.
And I've got a Coos-Town root beer.
Perfect. A good root beer. You know what? I love a nice, like, cold soda, like after like mowing the lawn or something. It's one of my favorite things. Yeah.
I treat myself to a couple of root beers a week. I have to put a limit on it. Last week, when we did the show with my buddy Tyler, well, I said, I'm going to break out something special for the first episode. I had, actually, you were in Gettysburg with me. We were in Gettysburg together.
Is it the root beer? I think I saw it.
Yeah, it was the root beer, and that thing's been sitting since I got home in the fridge. And, dude, it was horrible. Like, it was so bad. It was so bad.
No, I'm sorry. I don't like Guinness. I'm sorry. I let you down.
So let's. I did see a question here, so let's go ahead and take a question.
Sure.
Readout Productions actually says. So here's a question. James, have you considered covering any elements of firefighting history? During the pandemic, I got interested in the big blow up of 1910 out in Idaho. That's pretty cool.
So when I went through the Fire Academy, they had a portion talking about the history, and naturally that was something I was interested in. I actually work for St. Augustine, so pretty rich history. So it's always neat learning about, the department that you work for and where they came from. And our chief does a really good job of, all the trucks have the original hose company names. Because usually, just think about a fire department today. Well, in the 1800s and early 1900s, it was just random individual firehouses throughout a city. And they all kind of, had their own identity and kind of did their own thing. So our department, we're kind of resurrecting some of those old names, like we have the San Margo Hose Company and Ancient City Hook and Ladder. And so that's just really cool to kind of carry on those historical names and things like that. I haven't really thought of doing any fire history on my channel, just because, I'm trying to keep it just military history. But there is I have an episode idea that I've been kind of throwing around. Sometimes the ideas are scary, but we actually had a member of our department fight at the Battle of Second Manassas for a Massachusetts regiment. Ended up surviving the war, retiring down to Florida, and he would become a chief for the St. Augustine Fire Department for a period of time. Oh, cool. And we actually have his fire trumpet on display. So I was going to try and do something. I'm not going to say the name or the regiment because I want to keep some things a surprise, but tie in his service at Manassas and then kind of tie in my fire department into it. Just one of those things you can't just walk in the station and start filming and things like that. So sometimes the city's a little weird, but I do want to tell his story, and kind of tie that into some fire service history. But yeah, that was a good question because the fire service history is kind of cool. The things they used and you have fire hydrants. We refer to them as plugs, and a lot of that originated from a lot of older cities had wooden water mains. So when they would get a hydrant, they would have to kind of drill into the wooden water main and then get the water, and then they would plug it up when they left. So that's why they're kind of referred to as plugs, which is pretty cool. Just kind of tying that history in there. But yeah, the fire service does have some cool history.
What's the Civil War regiment that was totally made up of firefighters? What was,
There was a handful. I know there was a handful on the Confederate side, maybe just companies as opposed to regiments. But you had the 11th New York. They were called the First Fire Zouaves. They were predominantly New York City firemen. They ended up mustering out, I think, at the end of 1862. But they got mauled at First Manassas. They made the charge up the hill 3 or 4 times. Actually helped the 69th New York regain their colors along Ricketts and Griffin's batteries in that area. And then you had the 73rd New York, called the Second Fire Zouaves. They were in the Excelsior Brigade, saw extensive action throughout the war, Peach Orchard, things like that. And I know there was a Philadelphia regiment, predominantly made up of Philly firemen. The number eludes me, but there was a handful of regiments made up of predominantly firemen. And anytime I go back to Gettysburg, one of my first stops is to the Peach Orchard and just to kind of hang out at that monument, the fireman monument. And then you have the soldier and the fireman on top of the monument right next to each other in the Peach Orchard, or right next to the Peach Orchard. Just one of my favorite monuments, and just knowing their history, it's pretty cool.
That's my favorite place on the entire battlefield, besides Cups Hill. And Ken Wyman actually said that your Cups Hill videos are great. So I'm gonna
Thank
go
you,
back
Ken.
with that real quick. Ken Wyman said that.
Big shout out to Ken, Dustin. They're both Patreon supporters. I'm forever grateful for them. The fact that they're willing to pay extra money to hear me ramble and just continue hearing my voice. I don't understand it, but thank you. Paul, he's a YouTube member of mine. Again, big shout out to Paul. I actually got to hang out with Paul a little bit in the beginning of this year. I believe it was March. We kind of toured the battlefield of Lexington and Concord for about an hour or two. I was supposed to film, but had the worst luck. But I still was able to meet up with Paul and kind of hang out and walk around. So yeah. So thank you guys for tuning in.
I'm jealous. Me, you, and Paul all got to hang out when we went to Gettysburg for the 160th, and we had a great time. We hung out a little bit. I know you were running around like crazy. I was running around like crazy, and dude, it was fun though. It was.
One of the things I got to get better at is I think each trip I do, I try to do one trip where I kind of get content for a huge chunk of the year. I've gotten better at not filming from sunup to sundown, trying to, at least enjoy where I'm at. Maybe if I start an hour later as opposed to right at sunrise, or, knock off around 4 or 5 o'clock and, have a nice dinner and, just enjoy where you are and the stories that, that place holds. Because like you said, at the 160th, it was just nonstop going from place to place, filming nonstop. And then you're home, you're like, I don't even
remember it.
And it's just like, and you kind of burn yourself out, because not only do you got to film all these places, then you got to go home, offload everything, and then you got to start editing. So I've learned to, just enjoy where I'm at, because again, it's just these places are so special and they all hold, different stories and lessons.
And that's something that, people watch the YouTube videos, they see the end result, but they don't see what it takes to actually film an episode and the amount of work that goes into them. And You know, you and I have talked a lot, and that's my problem. Like, I would literally go somewhere from the time I step out of the car to the time I'm back in the car, I have the camera in my hand. And when
Mhm.
I leave, I'm like, I don't remember anything I just seen,
Yeah,
you know, because you're
it
so focused on the
goes by.
camera work.
Mhm. Yeah, and when I try to cram or fit so much in a day, and then you start getting fatigued mentally, and then you start making mistakes, you start saying units that weren't there. Like I said, these battles are chaotic. There's thousands and thousands of moving parts at the same time. So I've learned to just kind of reduce my workload a little bit, but also maybe provide a little more information because I'm kind of slowing down.
Um, Paul actually said that he found it neat that the Plymouth, Massachusetts area in the very early days had every resident had 2 leather water buckets on their house and required to be on bucket brigade depending on the location.
Very cool. Yeah, I mean, a lot of towns, if they didn't have a designated fire company, it was up to the people, the individuals. Because think about what all these structures were made out of in the 16, 17, 1800s. You had fires taking out entire cities. So yeah, I mean, it was truly an all hands on deck sort of approach.
So, what's in store for you at Gettysburg this weekend? That's what I want to know.
So I'm actually taking the family with me. I promised my wife I would do a fall trip with her. We really like, being in Florida, you don't really get all the seasons, at least not as much as you should. They tend to come later and, they don't last as long, but, she's from Wisconsin, so she's used to seasons and stuff like that. So I was like, oh, we'll do a fall trip. And then there was an event at the Daniel Lady Farm that kind of popped up, and I was asked to help film it, or at least gather footage for projects through Matt with Addressing Gettysburg. So I was like, yeah, Matt and I actually worked together during this last anniversary at Gettysburg, filming the Liberty Rifles as they portrayed the 69th New York going through the wheat field, which was just an awesome experience. Actually seeing, blue clad soldiers, portraying a regiment advancing through the wheat field as if, that's like literally in their footsteps. It was a pretty cool experience. So getting footage for that was awesome. Matt's a fantastic asset. He's a fantastic person, wealth of knowledge, and I'm excited to work with him again. So I'm going to be doing that, and also taking the family with me. They've never been to Gettysburg, so that's going to be a pretty cool experience. I had an ancestor that fought there, so it's going to be cool to kind of bring my daughter to the spots where our family fought. She's way too young to understand it or realize it, but for me, it's going to be pretty cool, and I'm excited about that. So yeah, it's going to be a bit of a family trip, but I am going to gather some content and also get some more pictures and content for these virtual battle walks.
You know, I'm just curious. You've been to a pretty substantial number of places. What has been your favorite to film so far?
Oh God, uh, it's hard because every battlefield is special in its own way that I've been to. Gettysburg, you can kind of put it in a league of its own. Just the interpretation that they do, no very little battlefields have flank markers, and then you have brigade tablets, division tablets, and then the regimental markers, and then there's monuments to individuals. It's just, and there's so much information about it. And then you have the town itself, so you can bring your family, and they can go to the shops and the restaurants and the museums, and then you can literally buy a sword that was used at a Civil War battlefield. Like it's Disney World for history buffs, and I mean that in the best way possible. So Gettysburg is kind of in its own class. Antietam is a phenomenal place to visit, powerful place to visit. But if I can say my favorite, I would say Chickamauga. It's a very confusing and chaotic battle. And quite frankly, when I was studying to do my series on Chickamauga, I was a little worried because I was like, I don't understand it. Like, how can I go to this place and talk about it? And I just have no idea what's going on. And, I did a lot of preparation for that one. And then when I got there, it just clicked, and I knew exactly where I was. I knew exactly what happened, and things started flowing. And I since that time I've been back 3 or 4 other times, and every time I go there, just the interpretation there is fantastic. The information available is fantastic. The way the Park Service takes care of that battlefield is amazing. I mean, you're talking about huge plots of wooded areas where you can take a trail to an artillery battery, and it's a perfect trail, well maintained. I've never had an issue getting to a spot. Everything's clearly marked. It's a phenomenal battlefield. The terrain features, you have, fighting on hills, you have fighting in thick vegetation, you have fighting in more traditional open fields, fighting on bridges and things of that nature. So it's just a little bit of everything. And it was kind of just one of those moments where you're there and you're like, and it kind of clicks. And, although I've kind of had that at other battlefields, it was just special at Chickamauga. And it doesn't hurt that Chattanooga is 30 minutes away. So there's plenty of dining options. There's plenty of lodging options. It's a major city. It's a beautiful city. And Chattanooga also has Civil War history of their own. And one of those sites is Lookout Mountain, offers some of the best views of any Civil War battlefield that I've been to. And also they have the National Medal of Honor Museum right downtown in Chattanooga. So it's the whole area is just packed with history. And it's really easy to get to, which is a plus, because a place like Shiloh is a little difficult because there's no major cities nearby. I believe I flew into Nashville, and it was about a 2.5 hour drive. And I think Memphis is, maybe 2 hours. So it's a bit to get to. So Chickamauga is my favorite.
I will agree that Chickamauga, I wouldn't say it's my absolute favorite, but it's one of my favorite. And you nailed it in the reason why, because it's while it's a difficult battle to understand, I mean, what impressed me is that you had every experience of terrain that a soldier could experience at Chickamauga, and they fought in all of it. I mean, the open fields, Henry Hill being, a huge hill, and then, you got wooded areas. And what's perhaps your favorite spot on the Chickamauga battlefield, if you got one?
I like Vineyard Field, which is, I believe it's on the south end of the battlefield. So you have the Lafayette Road essentially runs right through the middle of the battlefield. The visitor center is on the north end of the battlefield, and you take the Lafayette Road south, and it's the very last field called Vineyard Field. It was the site of some of the nastiest fighting on September 19th of 1863. And I just like that area because, one, it's a more traditional view. It's a little more open, so it's a little easier to understand. But also there's a lot of there's a handful of Florida units in that area. The 6th Florida, through the chaos of battle, ended up making a charge alone across Vineyard Field into an artillery battery. They naturally got eviscerated. But, just being able to, walk in the same area as troops from Florida, where I'm from, essentially fought. And then you have Benning's Georgians and Robertson's Texans in that area. And they got caught in what's we call now the ditch of death. They essentially ran into, they were exposed, ran into Wilder's brigade, who was sporting 7-shot repeaters. And they ended up pulling back into a ditch. And then Eli Lilly brought his battery up and essentially was just firing canister down this ditch at these poor guys. And it's just a really chaotic and bloody area. And it's still easy to follow though. And that's why I like it, because like I said, it's nice and open. There's more defined lines. Confederates are coming from this way, the Union's this way. And it's just a very interesting part of the battlefield for me.
I don't know. Have you made it to Alatoona Pass yet?
No.
That's up there on one of my favorite battlefields, but it's a weird place, man, because the banks, you walk through the middle of the railroad cut there, and the banks are 20, 30 foot up in the air. Mm-hmm. And, one of the things I was thinking about, the reason why I mentioned Alatoona is because when I was there, I was thinking of how the men got their field pieces up there. And I was wondering the same thing when I was at Lookout Mountain. I mean, you go on Lookout Mountain in Chattanooga, and it blows your freaking mind of like how did
Yeah,
these guys get cannon up here?
I don't know. I mean, when you even go to Gettysburg at Little Round Top, like how did they get? They literally the Confederates are advancing, like, and they're wheeling these batteries up by hand. That's just, it's hard to fathom. Again, these men were a different breed on both sides. They were the definition of tough and resilient, and yeah, they're doing things 160 years ago that you and I probably can't do.
Let's see. I just saw a comment here from Paul, actually, saying that someone just vandalized a monument on Little Round Top today. Yeah, well,
When they catch him, they should make him run laps up and down Little Round Top with a pack on until he drops, and then maybe he'll appreciate the area.
I couldn't agree more, dude. I mean, I hadn't heard any news or anything, but I don't understand people sometimes.
Yeah.
But Readout Productions says, I'm still a little confused about the difference between a National Medal of Honor Heritage Center in Chattanooga and a new National Medal of Honor Museum. What's the difference in designation?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's where the money comes from. Maybe one is federal and maybe one is private. I really don't know, because when I went to the one in Chattanooga and then I learned about the new one that they're building, I was like, wait, what? They're moving it? But no, they're two different entities. But I really don't know. I would say maybe where the money comes from or what organization runs it, maybe. But yeah, I'm not sure. It's a good question.
Well, we hit your favorite battlefield. What's the favorite museum, you think?
Museum. So the American Civil War Museum, I've only been to the one in Richmond. I wasn't able to get to the one in Appomattox. I've been to the National Civil War Museum. I think that's my favorite Civil War museum, the one in Harrisburg. But museum overall, the National World War II Museum in New Orleans. Oh my God, phenomenal. We actually went there. We were on our honeymoon. So we spent a day. We literally spent the entire day there. Got there right when it opened, and then we left at like 5:00, and went through every single building. It was phenomenal. Just the artifacts they have, the way they've designed the museum, and just the like how they immerse you in to what theater of the war you're walking through. I would say that is my favorite.
I did the exact same thing. Me and my wife went there for our honeymoon. So
Yeah,
we sat through the 4D movie. Did you guys do that when you went?
What's that?
The 4D movie in the theater.
Oh,
Did you
yeah.
guys watch that?
Yeah.
Dude, that's something else.
Mm-hmm.
That's something else. I thought my wife was actually going to start throwing things when the chair started to shake.
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
she didn't know what was going on.
Mm-hmm. And then they have a newer portion. I don't know when it opened, but they have vehicles and planes in it. And you literally take an elevator up 3 or 4 floors, and then you're looking down. I believe it's a B-17. I don't remember. It's been a few years, but you're looking down at this bomber. It's just, and like you feel like you can just envision the pilots flying it. It's just a fantastic place.
Paul says we need to both come and visit the American Heritage Museum in Hudson, Massachusetts. I've actually never heard of that place.
Yeah, I've heard Paul mention it, and I've seen pictures from it. There's also one in, oh gosh, it's not in Chambersburg. It's in the city north of Chambersburg. There's a museum there. I forgot the name of it though. But yeah, there's a handful of really cool museums like Paul just mentioned. Even the National Army Museum that opened in Virginia a few years ago. There's so many, which is a great thing. There's a lot of great places to visit out there.
So you hit on this a little bit earlier, and I wanted to hit on it before we get off of the podcast. So no better time than now. The podcast, you do have a new podcast coming up called is it the Distant Drums podcast? Is that correct?
Yep. Distant Drums podcast. We're launching it October 1st, you're going to start hearing episodes come out. I think we're going to launch 3 on the first day. So you guys can decide whether you like, love it, or hate it. But yeah, so I mentioned my buddy Andrew. He kind of reached out to me several months ago. Gosh, probably April, May. Follower of the channel. He's like, he loves Civil War history. He had a podcast a few years ago, but just never followed through with it. But reached out and asked me about starting one. I was like, I don't know, man. I barely know how to do YouTube. I was like, but maybe I'll help you do it. Maybe we can throw some episodes up on my channel and see what we can do with it. So I started doing some research and, kind of came up with the name, and just with talking to him and his passion, it was so contagious, kind of lit a fire in me.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what, let's do it. Kind of didn't really have a direction for it. And then I was like, you know what, let's just record a few episodes. And if we like it, then we'll keep it going. If we don't, we'll just start over and we'll keep going until we find, what we want to cover. So we recorded a couple, and then I really enjoyed it. I liked the direction we were going. And then Andrew, he's such a go-getter. He was having authors come on, and someone from an organization called Save Our Flags, and his sole job and his team, their job is to preserve the regimental battle flags from Michigan regiments from the Civil War. So that was a phenomenal experience, getting to learn about that and the process and a little bit of history behind that. We've had authors on, got some historians coming on now. In the later episodes, we want to do some stuff about Fredericksburg. So yeah, it's taken off, at least scheduling wise. We got almost 10 recorded, and then, like I said, we're going to start releasing them October 1st, which is a Wednesday, and then we'll do one a week after that, every Wednesday.
Are you ready for a loaded question, bro?
Sure.
And I'll give you one guess who this question comes from. Dustin. He says,
Dustin.
He says, if money and time were no option, which historical location, overseas included, would be at the top of your list? Oh, God, I'm going to have to think about that myself for a moment.
See, like right off the bat, I want to say Normandy and Bastogne, because those are, Band of Brothers really drew you there, and you see those visuals, and so you want to go to those places. But if money and time weren't an option, of course Iwo Jima. But I would like to see. I don't even know if this is possible. Maybe the sites have been overtaken by the jungle, but sites in Vietnam.
Really,
Hamburger Hill. Walk that area, or where LZ X-ray, the I Drang Valley, or see some of the Khe Sanh. Just be able to see some of those iconic places that are ingrained in military history. Just because, again, it's not like a conflict that I'm deeply rooted in, and my knowledge can definitely be expanded on it, but just knowing the ferocity of that kind of combat and just that turbulent time in our country. I would like to see some sites in Vietnam, just because that's one of those places that I know I'm never going to get to. So if time and money were no option, or weren't in my way, then probably those. Pearl Harbor would be cool. Wake Island. It's just, that tiny little piece of land in the middle of the Pacific. I think that'd be cool. Waterloo. Just keeps going.
Can you even get to Wake Island?
I'm sure, if you have enough money.
Yeah, it did say money is not an option. I agree. I agree with you. Of course, I want to say Normandy, Bastogne, Austria. The Eagle's Nest, and that would probably be up on my list. But also, I think if money wasn't an option, in my style, how I'll just go to like 8 places at once. So I will start at the Tower in London, and then work my way across to Normandy, and then from there up to Bastogne, and then over to Austria. I think if money wasn't an option and I could afford that trip, that's what I want to do. Yeah. And I've been planning on that, actually, but it takes a lot of money to go overseas right now.
Oh yeah. That's what I said. Like Vietnam is one of those places where, that patch of land was just riddled with hundreds and hundreds of battles over, we were there for what, 15 years at least.
Yeah.
So think of all the major battles that happened there. I don't know. Like I said, I don't know if they're, even remnants of the battles. I imagine there's some scars left over, but it would be nice to walk it with a veteran from both sides. I think that would be pretty neat.
I know you had mentioned this movie earlier too, is We Were Soldiers. Like every time I think about Vietnam, We Were Soldiers is the first thing that comes to mind.
Yeah.
I think that stand at the place where that movie was really made about would be really, really cool. But I would be scared of the snakes, dude. Like, come on.
Oh yeah, I mean the wildlife, but that's not an option. I have enough money to make all that go away.
Paul said that in Nam he heard you can get a lot for $5. I think you can get sick in Vietnam for $5. Like, don't drink the water. I guess I don't know. I don't know what kind of diseases are in Vietnam, or snakes or malaria, or I don't know, dude. I want to go to Vietnam, but at the same time, I'm kind of like, that wouldn't be my first place I would say. So I was kind of
I like Readout Productions' idea. We'll just commandeer the Constitution and sail to Normandy.
I don't think they would appreciate that, but they would have to catch us.
Yeah, but money it's not. We have money, so it's fine.
We can just pay them off, you think?
I mean, technically it's taxpayer funded, right? So it is kind of ours.
I guess, yeah. Until we get taken down by a U.S. naval ship. Dustin says he's in, so we'll just fine. If we get caught, we'll just blame it on Dustin and then pay his bond. So, because money's not an option, right? But what is coming up in the future for you besides the battle walks on your channel and the podcast? What else is in the plans this year that you can share or willing to share?
Yeah, I mean, I'm about, I would say, a little over halfway through the Shiloh series, so I got to finish that. I think I have 6 out, and I think I have 10 total to do, maybe 11. So I got to finish that. I got 2 videos from Corinth I got to edit and put out there. Corinth was a really cool city. That's where I stayed while I was visiting Shiloh. There's 2 battles that happen in and around Corinth, and there's spots where you can visit old earthworks, and they have a Civil War Interpretive Center right downtown, great museum. And then there was actually some pretty heavy fighting in the Second Battle of Corinth when the Confederates tried to take it back. So I covered that. There's a really cool contraband camp in the area of Corinth that I covered, and I just got to get that out. What else? There's so much loaded in the hard drive. I don't remember. There's a couple from Gettysburg I still got to put out. That should take me to the end of the year. I was supposed to be done with the Shiloh series by now. It was my goal to be done with it by September, but here we are, and I still got 4 or 5 more to put out, but it's all right.
Well, dude, this has been a lot of fun. This has been a blast.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And guys, if you haven't checked out Project Pass, you got to go do so. And if you guys didn't see the little ticker down here, the little banner, I said, well, stay tuned for a big announcement. So there's actually 2 big announcements. I am here on the channel. James has been here before. Actually, some of his videos, he has some great videos from this place, has actually helped me kind of plan out a little bit. But I am headed to Yorktown next month, in Williamsburg and Jamestown, so that's the plan. James has got some great videos on Yorktown, so he's been kind of playing a little hand and helping me, kind of navigate the town a little bit and plan for
it's
that.
a very cool little town. Great food, right on the water. I think I got, oh gosh, what were they? I think they were buffalo chicken, mac and cheese, egg rolls.
What?
Man, yeah. In Yorktown.
My
wife and I still talk about them.
It was that good, really.
Yeah.
Macaroni and cheese, egg rolls.
I think we visited back in 21 or 22. I think 21.
Oh, wow.
Mac and cheese, egg rolls. Buffalo mac and cheese, egg rolls.
I might have to keep that in mind. Me and the wife are going to have to check out some buffalo cheese egg rolls.
Buffalo
or
mac and cheese.
mac
Yeah.
and cheese egg rolls. Yeah, I'm gonna definitely have to check that out. I'm excited about seeing the American Revolutionary War Museum there.
Yep.
General
Great
Washington's
place.
tent.
Yeah, oh yeah, that was cool. I didn't know that was there. So that's in like their visitor center, the Battlefield Visitor Center. So when you walk in, you kind of go to the left, and there it is behind glass. I was like, oh, like seriously? Like I had no idea this was here. So I literally stood there probably like 15 minutes, just like staring at it. And there's like different areas where you can look at it, so you can get different angles. It was pretty cool.
That's the coolest part of that entire video that you did at Yorktown for me, was you showed the tent, but then you actually went to the place where the tent was on the battlefield. So I was like, that's kind of crazy to think about, is the tent that's in the museum actually was right here. And you're walking the same ground as Washington and Baron von Steuben, and von Steuben is probably my favorite person from the American Revolutionary War, and I've been to his.
Turn us into a professional army.
It
a pretty big part in it.
And going to Yorktown for me is like making the full circle of the Baron von Steuben story from the American Revolution, because I've been to Valley Forge, I've been to his home site in upstate New York, so now I'm able to make it to Valley Forge, where you played such a crucial role there. So I'm looking forward to it. But yeah, man, I've been to Williamsburg. I wasn't really that impressed with Williamsburg. It was cool, but it was a little too Walt Disney-ish for me, I think.
Yeah, Williamsburg is one of those. It's a good place to go with your family. There's, of course, you have the historic buildings, but you have, a lot to do, a lot of events going on, and they have I like the band that kind of goes up and down the street. That's pretty cool.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, as far as like Battlefield goes, you of course not going to get that. But Williamsburg is a good stop. It's kind of like you can kind of say it's like the town of Gettysburg. Like you have a lot of shops and museums and historic structures and things of that nature. Yeah, so it's cool. You'll have a good time there.
So, but I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be really fun. And I guess the second announcement for you guys is it's been a very long time since I did this, but we are going to be doing a giveaway on the channel. So I want you guys to stay tuned to the channel for that. It's a giveaway you don't want to miss out on. It's going to be pretty neat. A lot of cool things in there from a number of different places, and some merch. So, and a couple of other things that you guys don't know about, and you'll find out here soon. So just kind of announcing we're going to give that giveaway away, and if you guys want in that, well, you can do that. But yeah, I mean, you got a busy week going to Gettysburg with the family. Yep. Gonna be able to see the Fields of Fury. Is that the name of it?
Yeah, that's the event at the Daniel Lady Farm. Yeah, which is it sounds like a really, really cool event. They're doing a reenactment, but it sounds like they're also focusing on the aftermath. When the armies advance through, the fields littered with dead and dying men. And they're having like litter teams come out and do that process, loading them up on carriages and bringing them back to field hospitals, from my understanding. So it's going to be cool to see that dynamic, because of course you see the battles and stuff when you go to them, but having that added dynamic and part of the battle, think about Gettysburg. How many months after the armies left were these men still in these field hospitals and barns and things of that nature? So it's good to see some of that.
And my favorite book pertaining to that, if you haven't read it, you got to, is Gregory Coco's book on where he talks about the aftermath of the Battle of Gettysburg. I can't remember the name of the book off the top of my head, but it's a great book. Gregory Coco has some great books on the aftermath of Gettysburg, field hospitals, that kind of deal. And the Daniel Lady Farm was actually the stepping off point for Cups Hill as well.
Yeah, and the Joseph Latimer, when he was wounded, they brought him to the Daniel Lady Farm from Benner's Hill, which is only a couple hundred yards. I want to say it's east. But
believe
that's
so.
he would end up having his arm amputated, and then
Well,
he would
there's
obviously perish weeks later. But yeah, that farm was a field hospital.
and they do a good job there actually depicting that.
Mhm.
And this weekend is the World War II weekend at Ike's Farm and at the World War II American Experience Museum in Gettysburg. So there's a lot of things, man, you're going to be doing in Gettysburg this weekend if you can go to
Oh yeah.
both. So,
Oh yeah.
well, with that, guys, thank you, James, for coming on. It's been fun.
Yeah.
Been a
Thanks for
blast.
having me.
Guys, go check out Project Past. And any last words for some viewers out there that for your channel?
No, just thank you. Never did I ever imagine that 10 people would subscribe, much less I, just crossed 12,000. So yeah, thank you. Of course, the Patreon supporters, including you, Josh, you're a Patreon supporter. Beyond grateful, super generous of you, and thank you guys so much. And let's keep learning stuff. There's a lot of it to learn.
And the coolest thing about this is the friendships you make. For me, is one of the biggest reasons I love doing YouTube. So Dustin has become a really good friend. Paul has become a really good friend. There's just so many people out there, you can't name them all. Me and you have become really good friends. We talk, at least once a week, and it's a great platform. So thanks for coming on. Thanks for sharing yourself with all of us on YouTube. And I'm looking forward to the podcast. That's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's been fun. Like I said, I wasn't really familiar with it, but it's been fun learning the process. And of course, I'm learning new things because we're talking about individual stories and battles and things of that nature. So it's just another avenue to learn from.
Well, just people, you need to check it out. If you're watching this, go check out Project Past. Give me some love and support, and then with that being said, we're going to cut out of here, and we're going to go before our wives get onto us, and you got some football to watch. The Packers are on. The Packers. Okay.
Yeah.
The only good thing I believe come out of the Packers was Brett Favre, and then the rest was Tom Brady and the Patriots. Sorry.
Yeah. There's different views on history, of course.
That means when if the two play each other, there's going to be some friendly betting going around. So, all right.
I'll take them this year. They're looking pretty good so far.
Well, guys, thank you so much for watching. Thank you, James, again for coming on. We will see you on the next episode, and until then, we'll keep preserving history. Stay safe, and make sure you tune in for the latest on James's channel and here on History Saver. And also go give some love and support to Matt at Address in Gettysburg, Will over at History Fits, and Lionheart Filmworks as well. And Emergent Civil War, as always. Emergent Civil War, dude, they got some good stuff. And I'm sorry we're not Gary Edelman's, but the American Battlefield Trust has you covered on an Edelman. So go check out the American Battlefield Trust, and we will talk to you guys soon.
Dilly.
Well, root beer. See you soon.